have Dermot McCormack, who is president of LiveXLive, and he will be in conversation with Seth Schachner, who is managing director of Strat Americas. Just keep in mind, I know you guys are pretty familiar with this by now, but we have active chat community. So make sure to introduce yourself on chat. And when you have questions, if you don't mind, it's fine to post them in chat, but also post them in the Q&A button as well. You'll see those two buttons on the bottom now, chat and Q&A. Also in the chat, it seems like the default setting is for chat to just go to panelists, and you should change that to panelists and attendees so everybody will see your comments. All right, listen, we're ready for a great show. I'll turn it over to Seth and Dermot.
Thanks a lot, Ned. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. So we got a really great number of people around the country checking in. We really appreciate that. So I'm gonna chat today with Dermot, who's in New York, despite his Chicago Zoom background there, about the business of live music and some of the factors around streaming and how the business is morphing right now. So we're going to do this conversationally for about 25, 30 minutes, and we're going to check out a poll. And as Ned just said, for those of you who ask some questions that get logged into the Q&A, we'll do our best to get to all of them, okay? So Dermot, let me start with kind of the big, obvious question that I think overlies lots of live entertainment businesses, not just music, and certainly not just LiveXLive, but want to hear your take on it. But, I mean, this is it's an extraordinary time, a global pandemic. There's tons of businesses and industry verticals are at the very least disrupted, if not totally stopped. From the live entertainment perspective, music, even more broadly, is this, like a blip and things will get back to normal? Or is it going to really fundamentally change the way people consume or attend live events over time? What's your thinking there?
I mean, it's a great question and it's a big question. So it's definitely not a blip, right? So whatever it ends up being, I don't think if you talk to anybody in the live music, whether it was the artists or Live Nation or people who own clubs or people who are roadies, they're not probably feeling a blip right now. In terms of, will we, end up going back to festivals again and seeing live shows? Yes, we will. And I look forward to it. I think what we're seeing, and obviously we stream live music and we've been doing it for several years. And it's a very popular thing right now. We're kind of busy, but I think what it will do, it will establish live music as a digital entertainment option in a way that maybe it hasn't been before. As artists start to use this tool, because remember, every tour in the world, every festival in the world has been canceled. Like all industries have suffered, and music is right in the center of it. So I think people are starting to explore live music. The artists are, from a digital perspective, the artists, which is the exciting part for me, are really starting to be, over time, will be creative with the medium. Instead of just replicating what they do on stage or finding cameras at a stage, they're starting to be creative. That's the part I'm excited about. So I think it's not a blip. We will recover. Everybody will recover. How long it's going to take, I don't know. But I do feel this, that the idea of live music through your entertainment device will be established in a new way, and new monetization vehicles will definitely grow from that. So I feel strongly about that.
Yeah, no, definitely. But maybe just a little bit, to circle in a little bit on brass tacks or details. I mean, this new reality, is there anything specific in terms of LiveXLive's business? Like, how is it factored into your world? Has it shut stuff down? Do you have kind of plenty of programming that's been loaded up over the past few years so that you can, kind of walk through this? Or how has it really affected you in maybe in the short term, I guess?
Sure. So we typically had streamed physical events. So every major festival in the world, we had moved on to everything from small shows to club shows to arena shows. So if there was live music being played, we were streaming it. So what has happened, obviously, was like pretty much every event in the world was canceled. So we had hundreds of events cancel on us in terms of physical events. But we were also really tooled up to take advantage of, or at least enable what was happening from the streaming perspective. So we started to really rebuild our slate around digital virtual concerts, or stay-at-home concerts, if you will. So we're planning a response that will be announced next week, where we've been working really hard on. And then we're really programming for day-to-day music on an ongoing basis. So we've essentially rebuilt our entire schedule around, home-to-home, smaller, intimate concerts, as opposed to stuff coming from an arena. So the response has been essentially doing what we were doing, but just responding to where the artists were. So a lot of artists are at home, and they're starting to want to have bigger tools than just streaming to places like Instagram. So we probably have a queue a mile long of people wanting to work with us right now.
Cool. So maybe, we've got Live by Live is a really interesting enterprise, and I want to touch on that a little bit as we go into the conversation. But just for the folks out there that don't necessarily know exactly what it is, could you just maybe give us like the highest level, primer
Sure.
on what Live by Live is and what business lines are part of your organization?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm Dermot McCormack. I'm the president of Live by Live. I'm also a member too, not just the president. But that's my joke on that one there, Seth. So we're the premier platform, we believe, for live streaming music across the globe. So essentially, we film festivals, we film shows, we do custom shows, and everything from Rock in Rio to EDC Vegas to Montreux Jazz Festival. Life is Beautiful. The list goes on and on and on. And in recent times, we've started to move to all sorts of live music. So we believe that essentially, in the new OTT, future, live music becomes as important over time as live sports. And live sports is, very expensive, and it's sewn up. So we feel there's an opportunity for music in a live format, in a digital content bundle, in a way that hasn't been before. We feel this phase will be a catalyst towards that. So that's one large piece of our business. We have a subscription part of our business through the acquisition of Slacker Radio. So we have last announced 820,000 paying subscribers. So we've essentially bundled music and video in innovative ways in a platform that also is starting to include original content. And we just launched our first linear channel with Stir, Sinclair. We probably have 4 or 5 more partners coming up in rapid succession in terms of linear channels. So ultimately for us, live music is the tentpole piece of our puzzle. We're evolving into original content around music, linear channels, ad-supported channels, but ultimately to drive our subscription model, where we feel there is super music fans in the world that want a more boutique experience. They want video, they want audio, they want social connection, and we feel we can provide that. So that's where we're going writ large. And this particular moment is, as long as we can bring live music in a creative fashion, particularly the people who kind of see 2 shows a week and they're not really able to see them today.
Right. So no, that's great. So the business model, when you just in these basket of businesses, how does it play out in terms of advertising versus subscription? Is it fundamentally a media vehicle in the way one might think about a broadcast network, or is it more about the subscription services? What are the sort of the drivers of the business model there?
It's very heavily skewed towards subscription. We have a growing advertising business, and we're getting amazing amount of inbound right now from advertisers, because they want to be around music. There's not many places where music is happening today. So if there's any sponsors listening, feel free to call me. I'll take anybody's call. But so it's sponsorship is a growing part of our business, and the bulk of it is a subscription. We really feel, again, there is a need. We love Spotify. We love Netflix. We think we're not going to be able to compete with them. We don't want to. What we think is there's a product for super music fans around the globe that really want a little bit more than the standard offering. And again, if you're a super music fan and you want to see the concert live, or you want to see the VOD after you left the show, or you want to see the interview with the artist and the playlist, and you want to go deeper, that's what we want to do.
Yeah, and you have like a pretty tremendous amount of music festivals. I think more than anyone I've seen in the market. Yeah. Several thousand.
Yeah, well, in total events through all our partnerships, we have over 1,500 events, but we did have until this happened. But right. we have those. They're all long-term deals. So we've got probably, probably the biggest bouquet of live music events in terms of streaming than anybody. And we'll shoot the production capabilities. We'll shoot, like a big festival like EDC Vegas, which is probably one of the biggest festivals in the world. We'll shoot that, 3-4 days, 8 stages. That's a big shoot. And then we'll go all the way down to, like, I think 5 days ago we shot Tanashi in our living room with 2 cameras, and we'll all the way go down to an iPhone. So we'll scale from shooting on an iPhone all the way up to a 24 camera HD shoot with jibs over 8 stages. So I think there's few companies that can scale up and down in terms of production. And then the secret sauce for us is really the distribution element. So what people are starting to find out now is, as they start to streaming is not as simple as opening your iPhone and playing. It's a little more complicated, and it requires audience generation, it requires a technical capability, and so on. So we tend to believe we have a bunch of those pieces.
Yeah, no, it's one of the things I was curious about. It's a fascinating, enterprise that you have, but are you a broadcast entity? Are you a digital entity? I mean, when you think about your audience, where it's coming from, can you get it on DirecTV or cable networks?
Yeah.
Where are you in sort of?
So we're very primarily, the line between what's digital and what's broadcast is blurring to the point where it's almost difficult to know the difference. I have a history in cable television, and we're primarily digital today. So most of the channels we're launching in the first phase are on OTT platforms, but we are in active conversations with regular cable and satellite providers. So we're taking a very, it's kind of like if you started MTV today, what would you do and where would you go? Would you start it in one place with a number, or would you start it on every screen you could find, and would you mix as many different things in? So our approach is, and I spent 8 years, for full disclosure, at MTV, but great company, and we love it. But at the end of the day, if you were starting it today, what would you do? So we take a very multi-screen approach. So we have 1-minute shows. We have 8-hour shows. We're very kind of multi-discipline in terms of content, and multi-discipline in terms of distribution, because that's really where the audience lives today. Like we're doing a video webinar on a phone to lots of people. So the world has just moved, and we're trying to build a content company to match all those places. But coming to a cable system near you, I hope, very soon.
No, it's very interesting, because that was actually leads into my next question. So just if you look out on the competitive landscape, because I see that it appears strategically you found a certain spot in the market, and I'm just curious, like if I'm Viacom or MTV Networks, or even if I'm hypothetically a large concert promoter, a Live Nation or an AEG, why would I let someone else run this? I mean, is that sort of the spot in the market that really isn't covered, basically, where you're playing?
Yeah, I mean, we're partners with all those people you mentioned. And at the end of the day, doing this stuff is not easy. It's not easy, and it seems easy. And there's a bunch of people gonna go through this phase where there's a lot of live streaming happening, and we're happy about that. We're not happy that the shows are being canceled, because we're big fans of music and artists, but it's complicated. It really is, and it's not something you can just switch on and do. We've got 4.5 years and change building this up, knowing how to aggregate audiences, knowing how to spread the signal across multiple platforms, knowing how to shoot quality content, knowing how to have those artist relationships and label relationships. So I think the unique part about what we do, and I'm not saying we're the only ones in the world that can do it, but we probably, in terms of our stack right now, we are, because we have an audio stack, a video stack, a live video stack, and a distribution stack. And there's very few people that have all those pieces together. So if you're Epic Records right now, you want to find the platform, I'm just saying Epic as an example, to stream your artist, and we've had a bunch of conversations this week. They're like, well, one company does production, and one company does marketing, and one company does technical CDN streaming, and one company does, so it's kind of like, it's very hard for them to find one company that does everything. And we do. We can add pay-per-view in there. We can add all sorts of things. That's where we think this all goes anyway.
Yeah. So no, that's great. I mean, I'm also just curious, because it definitely appears in the stack or just in your scope of businesses? You've got an audio streaming business piece, and then you mentioned original programming as well. So clearly you're trying to expand beyond just pure, I wonder if you want to call it rebroadcasting of live concerts, right?
And just so you know, we don't rebroadcast, we shoot the concert.
Okay.
So it's not like we take a signal and we just rebroadcast it. We actually go in, put our cameras in the field, put our producers in the field, shoot it, edit it, distribute it. So that's kind of an end to end. And we're also a partner with iHeart, and we do all their broadcasts, and we'll shoot Wango Tango, we'll shoot iHeart Country. So it's kind of an end to end solution. Some, you know, we've streamed everything from, you know, we did the comedy charity special. We didn't shoot it, but we just restreamed it. So we'll do both, but in general, I would say 90% of the time we're shooting with our own cameras.
Right. Okay. Yeah, but just original programming is a piece of this as well. And I imagine you touched on live streaming, which is obviously exploding right now. That's a piece of what you're trying as well, it sounds like, yeah?
Sorry, what did you say? Sorry?
Live streaming as well, in the way, say, artists with Twitch are doing it now, or other platforms?
Very much so. So we've already done a bunch. So we've done, and we have a whole schedule coming up, and we'll probably end up having 200 or 300 by the time the year is done in terms of actual artists. So we had to rebuild our whole schedule, but now it's kind of like there's a line around the corner. Like we can almost not keep up with demand with the amount of artists. And what we're starting to see now is the first wave of the concerts from home. Well, very much, it was kind of a new thing. It was like, okay, it's a charity thing or something, and we're going to play guitar. And now the artists are kind of getting to that moment where they want to be creative. That's another big piece of this, right? Like artists are artists because at the end of the day, they want to express themselves and be creative. And now we're starting to do shows where people want to, you know, essentially get off the couch, go into their garden, get some, you know, dance routines and some sets going. We did it, like I said, we did a great one with Tanashi, and she essentially did a music video as part of her her stream, and we were really excited. We're doing another one with an artist on Wednesday, I think, who's going to, without giving it too much away, but he's going to drive around in his car and have a GoPro and do some stuff. So even though it's a tough time for everybody, it's a tough time for production, we can still be creative. And I think because of that wellspring of creativity, it's going to really put energy into the live streaming as a concept. And just one note, Seth. Yeah, you know, the music, as you know, the music business has changed, and it used to be you made an album and you went out and promoted it by touring, and now you make an album to promote your tour because the money has shifted into touring, and most artists really make all their money from touring, and they might be on the road 300 days a year. So what's happening is, if you could actually make some money by not having to be in a club and in a city every other night, that's the big change I think that's going to happen. It won't replace touring, it won't replace the industry, but I think it will give an option for people to say, hey, you know what, maybe I don't have to do 300 days, maybe I could do 240 days or 250 days. And I think that's a reality.
Yeah, no, and I think the extent live streaming, you know, at home, and I work for some social music applications, driving artist partnerships, and you know, I mean, I hate even to bring it up, but just the irony is that, you know, the recording from home phenomenon, the ability for artists to do things on their own now, to the extent that they're not making full-on professional productions, is if anything, it's enhanced. And we're seeing some groundswell of activities on some of the social networks we work with basically on it. So if they can record at home, I think that's a big piece of it. What about just like genres? Is it anything specific in terms of like rock, hip hop, country? You know, anything specific work better than other genres on your network?
Across the board, no. That's another, I think, unique part about what we try to do is we want to be very cross genre. And I think obviously there's the popular genres depending on what your demographic is, but ultimately, if I know you're a music fan, I'm a music fan, and I've never really met a music fan that says I just like one genre. I've never met one. There's probably some out there, but I haven't met them. It's usually you like almost a little bit of everything, and if you're a true music fan, so we really like the idea that we can be multi-genre. For example, one of our, you know, we streamed everybody from Taylor Swift to Selena Gomez on our platform and the biggest artists in the world. But one of the things that made me happy for several reasons was we did Rock in Rio, and we had one of our biggest organic traffic days ever, and it was from Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
So that just made me happy for lots of reasons.
Sure.
I'm a rock and roll kind of guy, but
Oh.
what it means is there's audiences, and there's audiences that want to find this and want to be. If you look at some of the places in terms of popular music, it really is limited to sort of these areas of pop music. And we like the idea that an Iron Maiden fan in the UK can find this live concert from Rio. We think that's special, and ultimately we
for
think
sure.
that's something that they pay for.
No, for sure. I work with tons of Latin interests, and so much of it is just blending into the general market now. And whether it's a reggaeton artist or Sertanejo is really popular in Brazil, for example, it seems to just be a big part of the mix driving stuff. Well, internationally, is it mostly a U.S. focused audience, or U.S. and Canada for you guys now, or have you thought about partnerships with carriers or outside the U.S.?
Yeah, well, so we already stream a bunch of festivals internationally. We do have an international audience. We've streamed, I think we've seen viewership from almost every country in the world, except the ones that block internet traffic. But everybody else we stream. We're in active conversations. We're a public company, so it's only so much I can say. But we, active conversations in places like LATAM and EU. So we think that's a great opportunity as we go forward.
Well, there's got to be tons of potential there for you, without question, basically. We didn't really talk so much about the audio streaming piece of it, and I know it's been rebranded, but you did buy a streaming service a couple of years back, and maybe just speak to how the audio streaming piece of it plays into your stack and what it means, how it helps you.
Yeah, well, and that's where we think some of the secret sauce is kind of how you connect all these pieces together. So we have we have 200 curators that curate, channels on our platform, everything from, hip hop to every genre, to comedy, to everything you can imagine. So what we tend to do is, let's say we have an event coming up, it might be Montreux Jazz Festival, or it might be Rock in Rio in Lisbon. We'll start to curate audio streams and artist streams around the artist playing at that festival. We'll start curating video around it, and start complementing. So A, you're promoting, the festival, and B, you're giving people a kind of a taste of how the audio experience is connected to the video experience, and then it leads up to the live portion, and then there's a post portion. So, for example, and a simple example would be, we also power all the audio in Tesla vehicles too. So when you hit music button on a Tesla, so our vision is really, you get ready for your show you're going to see by listening to the curated playlist, and it might be, if U2 are playing, which is one of my favorite bands, that's not surprised because I'm from Dublin, but you might have a bunch of influences of U2 on that radio station as you go in your car, and then you may want to see a replay of the video in our app, when you get home from a festival. So we wanted to connect all those dots together, and we try to complement everything we do from a video perspective with audio, and vice versa. And because we actually have humans creating our custom playlist, it's not algorithms that do it. We can be very responsive, and we had, for instance, I think, believe it or not, it was one of our most popular playlists in recent memory, was the Tiger King playlist that we did. So I don't know if an algorithm will come up with a Tiger King playlist. Yeah. And I don't know if it could, and if it could, we're in trouble. But that's what
right. No, but so it's a lot more strategic, it sounds like, towards your streaming business. So, and presumably whatever other streaming players that are already out there and licensed might not be maybe as receptive, as willing to flex and bend in there.
Well, if you think about it, most of the streaming players today who are in, quote, streaming music, right? Let's say we do, I'm trying to think what artists we've already announced, but the one that's in my head is Selena Gomez. We did earlier on this year with an album release party. So we have the platform in our app. So if you're watching Selena Gomez on her album release party, and right after you watch it in the same app, you can listen to that album. There's not many places you can have that experience.
Makes a lot of sense. And are you streaming just, in the same way, you have interactive rights the way a Spotify does, or is it primarily the old model where it's mostly about radio and customized play, which may just work as well for you?
We have all the tiers, right? So we have, Pandora-like experiences, and then we have all you can eat on-demand-like experiences too, depending on what tier you're on. But again, it's connecting those moments together in a way that again, if you're a fan, it makes sense and it's contextual. So we can go from a podcast interview around hip hop to to a lifestyle video series where we talk about sneakers with a hip hop star, to a live show, and then back into some audio. And that's the connective tissue that we like, because we end up as music fans doing it anyway. We're just going to 3-4 different apps and we're going all around the place. So this is built by music fans, people who kind of want to find those experiences that they couldn't find anywhere else. And we've still got ways to go. We're still making it better every day and adding, and we're learning a lot in this current environment too. We're learning new tricks and responding pretty quickly. But we're not a huge company. We're just responding quickly, and next week we're going to have a few exciting things maybe that you might want to pay attention to.
Well, look, it sounds very smart and, very complimentary to a lot of people's businesses, musicians for sure, and other interests in the market. It's really impressive. I think first time doing this webinar for Ned here, but I think we're at the point where we put up the artist poll here for hopefully some provocative points here. I don't know, Ned, if you want to do that now. Here we go. So,
good question.
Let's see.
What's your answer, Seth, to that?
How many artists have you walked from home in the last few weeks? I've actually been to 3 or 5. I've been doing it quite a bit, basically.
Yeah, I'm cheating, but I'm obviously over 8.
Yeah. But I will say, watching on Twitch and help a company called Gigmore that's also kind of morphing, and pretty surprisingly great stuff you're seeing there. I mean, there's artists that are new and developing, and we've seen some that look like the next Taylor Swift on it. So
yeah, and that's just while we're doing that, can I just make that note that that's one of the great things about festivals and live music is that you can't find those new artists. And if you're a music fan, that's the best part, is finding a new artist that you kind of fall in love with. And we're trying to figure out, at least in this world, is there new ways that we can help these new artists get into the hands of people who love to find out about new artists. So that's
no, absolutely. I mean, the just my experience with Twitch so far, I mean, for all of the good stuff about discovery and algorithms, whether it's human editors and curators or machines algorithms, there's nothing like seeing someone like that break through and just see from a business model perspective, tipping directly with Venmo, or it's the real deal. There's no royalty recoupments or statements involved, and people seem quite appreciative. It's been great. So so I guess just brass tacks, there's this poll up for you folks up there. So how many artists have you watched from home in the last couple weeks? What device do you listen to music on? You guys think artist streaming from home is here to stay? Very highly serious one. Have you watched Tiger King? And probably the most, when are things going to get back to normal? So I don't know if we're gonna put those polls up there, Ned, or we'll come back to that at the end. Anyway, let's do a little bit of the Q&A here.
Seth, to answer your question, let's leave them up for a little bit and let people answer, and then circle back and say 5 minutes.
All right, cool. So let's do that. And why don't we do a little bit of these quick Q&A, if that's okay with you, Dermot?
Sure.
We got a few some great questions in the queue here. Mr. Jeff Cohn, if it's okay that I call you out, has asked, how do you handle all the licensing involved in the broadcast of a live tour event? And does the event organizer do the heavy lifting?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Jeff. Thank you for that question. So that's exactly one of those things I was talking about earlier when you asked the question, Seth, about who's the competitors and who's doing this. That's the hard part. That's the thing people don't think about. That really takes an expertise and many years of experience, right? So if you know what you're doing and you know how to do it, there's a process to clearing music, right? There's a process to clearing live music. There's a process to clearing VOD music. You need those relationships with the labels. And again, because we have our audio platform, we already have those deals with those labels. But when it comes to publishing and who has rights, it can be complicated, right? Because there can be many types of people involved in that equation. So we tend to have a team who goes in, we clear LiveXLive, there's a process to do that. VOD, there's another process to do that. So we have a team, and they've probably cleared, I don't know, I don't know, maybe 1 million songs at this point, a lot. So they know what they're doing. And I think if you don't know what you're doing, that can be a very, very difficult part. But that's just one of those skills that nobody really sees when you see someone playing on Instagram. You're like, oh, this is cool. But behind it, there's a machine. And it's not always easy. It's a pretty complicated thing to do, as anybody watching this, and I'm sure Jeff knows because he asked that question. It's difficult. And it will continue to evolve. It will continue to evolve.
I would imagine you're probably steering between two pretty big, high peaks there to try and land it successfully on the licensing front. I mean, you're not really touching the actual sort of live concert or promotional business model between, say, an artist and a promoter as much as you are from a media going back to whoever the rights holders are.
Exactly that. And we do partner directly with, to Jeff's other question, directly with the festival owners. So when the festival is putting Beyonce on a stage or is putting Taylor Swift on a stage, they do a direct deal, and there's clearance language in that deal. So we tend to work hand in hand with the festival, and it could be already agreed upon in their direct deal with the festival, or it might not be. So you're starting to see more and more and more as we go forward. People are understanding that media is a part of a physical event now. And it just is, meaning, how that documentary comes out of there, how that live stream comes out of there, it's a part of it. And we work with all the festival owners, because not everybody can just switch on a global video production distribution system. And most festival owners, particularly probably after this, are just super focused on selling tickets, because the festival business is hard and it can rain and you lose money. So they don't have the bandwidth to focus, and they're a true partner. So we'll split revenue back with them too.
I see. And are, master recording owners, record labels, rights holders, are they, without going into great detail, friends of this process, helpful, see this as incremental, or are there some sensitivities there?
I think it's evolved. I personally have been involved in streaming live music for, I don't know, since my days in MTV and iPad. I've been doing it. It keeps evolving. So in the beginning, when I started doing this, the artists were a little bit wary of live digital web stuff, right? And they're like, I don't know, do I sound good? Do I look good? And it used to be kind of hard. And now we get artists asking us. And the reason they're starting to ask, there's many reasons. One of them is they built these massive social followings, and they have 50 million followers, but they don't have necessarily content to put down those channels, right? If you think about it, some of these artists have hundreds of millions of people. There's no cable channel really that has hundreds of millions of viewers. There's not in the world. So, but they don't have $1 billion content budget. But we'll shoot Taylor Swift in amazing HD and say sure, and they'll cross post on Facebook, and they're happy, we're happy. So the world has changed, at least in terms of the artists. And I think the rights holders are coming along and with the process.
I totally agree. I mean, I see that. I do quite a bit of social music business work with artists in the Latin region, and with artists like Anita, who a lot of Americans wouldn't know. That just 43 million Instagram followers. And signed to a major label, but could probably walk down Fifth Avenue and in normal days and not be recognized in New York. But just the enormous audience there is what's driving the attraction to consume something online. It doesn't actually have to be recorded music feature. It could be just hanging out and doing beauty tips, whatever it is. And typically the label will be helpful, I think, to a certain degree. So that's great. Let's go to the next one. Someone named M. Lewis has asked, outside of the obvious, the pandemic and the coronavirus, what's been the greatest challenge you've had to deal with so far?
Yeah, hold on one second. So it's in terms of business, right now, I will say, and there's a weird line between business and personal now, as we all sit at home, and it's just blurred in a way that I probably have the same answer. The challenge really is as we just have so much work to do, because we're rebuilding a whole schedule and it's working, and we have so much inbound in terms of artists and sponsors that, and again, we're not a 20,000 person company. So the challenge has been just, I don't know, working 20 hours a day. That's been the challenge for what we're trying to do. But I don't know if that's what the question meant, but that was.
Yeah, I don't know either. I know just in terms of the normal ebb and flow. I mean, obviously people are working from home, labels are working from home, managers. And so, I mean, that's obviously a huge disruption just to get people paying attention to doing something in terms of music and audiences right now during a time like this. But I've also seen businesses that can make it easy for artists to record at home, whatever it might be, to your point, and that can certainly help.
Yeah, I think it's look, we do a lot of direct work with artists, and I've probably been on, I don't know, 100 calls with managers and artists and agents this week. That's you know, I think artists are trying to figure out what this all means and how, you know, you asked a question earlier, like in terms of like, not so much in terms of live, but in terms of like performing from home, which, you know, there's certain artists that could do it really easy and they sit on the guitar and they play, and there's certain people that, like, it's not, they need their audience. There's some hip hop people we work with, and they need that energy off the audience. It's really hard to stand up in your living room and do what you do. So you know, I think they're the artist piece, and we're trying to work with them in many ways we can. You know, it's challenging to get them to be creative without some of the tools, but we're solving it, hopefully.
Yeah, no, definitely. That actually plays in. Peter Petro asked, basically, you know, what makes a live stream work? What drives its success, basically? I mean, you know.
Well, again, there's kind of a live stream in the world we were in a while ago, and there's a live stream in the world we're in today, and they're two very different things. So you can do, you know, these massive festivals that have, like, you know, they'll spend millions and millions of dollars on production and a set. That's a whole experience. And then you have a living room concert that doesn't have a set, but it's more intimate. There's maybe things. I'll answer those both pre and today and even post in the same way. And this is where this is why I'm doing this job, is because we think it's about creativity, and it's about bringing the creativity to the medium you're in. Like, just to give it some context, I was watching a documentary on ZZ Top the other day. And
I saw it on Netflix. It's great. Yeah.
And you know, you and I grew up probably watching ZZ Top on MTV. They just got the medium. They just understood this is a visual medium, and they were a band, a blues band from Texas that, in general, probably weren't going to make it out of that world for too long. But they figured out MTV, they figured out the medium, and they became global superstars. And I think what's happening, it's going to continue to happen with live streaming. And as this catalyst happens, it's like people figured out social. They figured out the medium. So I think it comes down to the creative. There's an artist called Youngblood, and his response is a UK artist, and his response was not just to stream. He created a variety show like Jimmy Fallon, and I just thought it was great. I was like, this kid is great. And the people who figured that out, how can we use the new tools of this reality to paint different pictures creatively? And I think, so the answer to the question is, what makes the best live stream? The best live stream is people understanding the medium and being creative and doing things like the idea that, what can I do in this medium I can't do elsewhere? And I think that's a really interesting idea.
No, for sure. I mean, I work for an app called Smule. That's a social music community, and drive the Latin partnerships for them in within 3.5 years. I don't know,
I'm a big fan of Smule.
Artists. And the thing about Smule, you know, is it's interesting. It looks like it's live, you know, singing along. That we record the artist once. And what's, you know, even the biggest artists, the stuff that works best is often the stuff that's just imperfect. It's just this weird, organically canned connection between an artist and his or her community, basically. In fact, we get the biggest artists. Sometimes we'll get some that don't want to sing. I won't get into names, or we ask them to sing, and some that do. And it's usually the ones that look and have the most fun, that figure out a way to organically interact with their audiences, that figure out the medium, that get the most engagement, which is what we're actually driving for. And I think a lot of these social vehicles are as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Let's go to the next one. Mark Slaughter. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name. Has asked a long one, but governments don't allow people to congregate in small numbers in arenas until, say, late summer, early fall. Not allowing indoor arenas because of, you know, the virus. You know, how do you pivot in these scenarios? Basically, I think we touched on it earlier. But, you know, maybe what's the live by live sort of pivot strategies around original content and live streaming, or different types of programming, or what's your sort of thinking there?
Yeah, we were moving towards original programming anyway, but the pivot, we're lucky in a way in that our pivot is not a pivot. It's the same mission. It's just some production changes, right? So our mission is to bring artists live streaming to people via their device. So that hasn't changed. So whether someone is in the living room, whether someone's in a 10,000 person arena or a 100,000 person stadium, our mission hasn't changed. And frankly, the way we do it hasn't changed. It's just, okay, so it's a different production scenario. So it's not a pivot. It's the same. That's why we're so busy. We don't have to pivot. We're just like, okay, so we're shooting someone. We did Marky Bassi from his deck on his house last week. So it's a production change, but we're still bringing an artist, live singing, getting their personality through to an iPhone, to a television, to a computer. That mission hasn't changed. So that's why, well, we're busy and it's stressful, but that's why we're busy, because our mission hasn't changed. It's just a little bit of a tweak.
Yeah, stick to your core. I'm going to skip around a little bit because we've got some different questions that are out there, but my good buddy and former Jive colleague, Michael Galby back there in New York, has asked about social integration, basically. How do you integrate Twitter, Instagram, other social platforms and audiences is in terms of what you're doing?
Well, I know Michael too. Hi, Michael. How are you doing today? His question is leading, I think, but we'll let him do that.
I think it's the softball for you. You must have teed this one up.
Yeah, no, Michael's a good friend. So, I mean, how we integrate it is it's almost like it's not even integrated. It's part of how we build it. And one of the things that I learned when I was at Viacom and MTV was, the shows or the content that was built post the social age, we just kind of bolted on social later. And then the ones that we built from the ground up when we knew it existed. So if we worked on the VMAs, and pre-Twitter was a different world than post-Twitter. And then we would build integrations in and out. So there's one integration, which is what's the technical integration? And technical integration is when you're in a digital world, you have digital integration in. The more interesting integration for me is the content integration. How do you engage the content to use those tools? So you can integrate all the share buttons you want. You can integrate your buttons and your chats and your matches, and we have all that. It's more about what would a concert look like? Like we're doing it right here. We're integrating interactive social features like polls and questions, and it's moving. So what does that look like in the form of a live music event? That's the part that to me it was the part that was interesting to me with shows at Viacom, and it's the part that's interesting to us with live music. So I would say the answer to that question is twofold. Integrate the tools, yes. Leverage those tools, yes. Leverage those platforms. But more importantly, leverage the content and make the content match the environment you're building in.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. But you would, I mean, I don't know how to put this, but do you kind of originate this on your own through your own production processes, or I don't know, an Instagram Live, a Facebook Live, or some of the other streaming platforms out there? Do you work with them or just sort of pull in their audiences as appropriate?
Yeah, and that's another, I think, unique thing about what we do is, and again, it's the idea of like, if you were to build, MTV meets ESPN today, how would you do it? We have our own and operated platforms, but we're essentially ultimately platform agnostic at the end of the day. We want to be everywhere our audiences are. We're on Twitch, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on your fridge, we're on your toaster oven, like we're in your car. So ultimately for us, we're like, we don't want to be in a walled garden, and we don't want to be, we don't want to be one dial at one place. So that's a mission from the beginning, was we wanted to be very platform agnostic.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. We've had a couple of questions out there. Andrew Watson is one, and a couple of others out there. Rosemary and Puerto Jacobs is also just about new platforms. I mean, a little bit further out, if you think about, VR, there's holograms that are out there as well. I mean, there's tons of platforms outside of even streaming and just the live business. Touching on any of those things, just some thoughts, kind of cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, one note would be every deal we do with a festival or a music venue or anytime we get rights to these things, we build in VR, AR rights, because we know that that will become interesting platform. Is it fully there today? I don't know. I don't think there's enough usage in the world for it to be fully there. But there's no doubt that there will be some type of a digital experience that starts to move beyond the two-dimensional one we have today. There's no doubt about it at all. And whether that's Magic Leap or Oculus or something else, or a mixture of all of the above. But it may be it reminds me of a question with particularly with VR and AR. It's like every technology I've seen it, and this is not my quote, but it takes longer to get there, but it does more when you get there. And I think that's the key to that piece.
Makes a lot of sense. You were running towards the end here, but just, I mean, if you can see the poll results, and I don't know if I'm seeing anything radically dramatic in here, but most of you have, watched a couple of artists from home in the last few weeks. The bulk just 0 to 2, and yeah, it looks like the mobile phone, the computer, all the above appear to be in there. Everyone thinks artist streaming from home is here to stay. That's great, basically.
Yeah. I'm surprised at the Tiger King result, actually. I'm surprised at that.
2/3. So that part, And it looks like people are hoping for August or October when things get to, back to some sort of level of normal. Here's hoping it's sooner, and that everyone, out there appreciate. There's a lot of you out there. Stay safe and healthy, basically. And I want to thank you, Dermot. This is a really cool conversation. I'd love to do it in person sometime with all of us.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll do that. And, thanks to everyone out there, friends, and all your questions, and Ned and Chinzar and Laura and the gang. This has been great.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining.